So you've gotten in a spot of trouble. It's happened to the best of us. Not your shining moment. Uh, it can be a very stressful ordeal for everybody involved. Let's say you've been arrested or apprehended, or you've been pulled over. You find yourself in a holding cell overnight, or subject to any sort of future issues. What do you do in that situation? And there are certain considerations, obviously, for veterans and military families, but for everybody. What do you do in that situation? It's become so fashionable now in social media land for people to post videos of their pullover, and almost like they want to catch the police officer in some sort of a gotcha moment. Like, well, here's my rights. Did you know that? Blah, blah, blah. And sometimes they're successful, and sometimes they just are making it up as they go and end up getting themselves into more trouble. You see that a lot with pullovers. You see that a lot with people. People have been posting a lot of videos of them not wearing masks in a place that mandates masks, and then getting into a fight and saying, I know my rights, and blah, 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 and creating a stink. Some guy was trying to launch his clothing line famously on TikTok by doing that not too long ago. But what are your rights? How do you stay out of trouble? Or if you're in trouble, how do you not make it worse? Or how do you potentially make it better? Very important for you to be armed with information in this case. Very important. And obviously, we're in the land of the speculative here. We can't give out any legal advice for fear of leading someone astray and then making ourselves liable for whatever. But we brought in some experts to talk about some of these hypotheticals, some of these situations. What are your rights? How do you stay out of trouble? How do you make it less bad if you're pulled over, you find yourself in handcuffs? What do you do to make it worse? What are some things that you should avoid? These are all things that you need to know. This is practical information. And we're going to get into it with our friends from West Dunn, who we love, from right here in Wisconsin. Absolute pros, veteran-owned company. We're going to get into it right after this. We've never done a show like this before. This is really, really, really exciting. It is legal month, and we have these theme months at the Wisconsin Veterans Chamber of Commerce that we've been doing, and we've been trying to stretch ourselves and go a little bit outside of our area of expertise. I don't know anything about the law, hardly, except for sometimes I got in trouble in college, and I ended up going to the circuit court, and, they gave me a little slap on the wrist ticket or whatever. I don't know anything about the law. That's my only experience with it. So this has been great for us to bring in all of these experts, these subject matter experts that really know their stuff, so we can share valuable information that is pertinent, that is relevant to all of you. So thank you for tuning in. No matter where you're watching, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, doesn't matter. If you have questions, especially, you can throw out hypotheticals. My cousin was pulled over for this. What should he or she have done? Or I'm currently being arrested and for some reason watching your live stream. What do I do? Throw out some well, that really wouldn't be a hypothetical, but very unlikely situation. Throw out some hypotheticals in the comments, and I will make sure that we in some way, shape, or form address it. But without further ado, friends, introducing Travis, Dave, and Eric from West Dunn. How's everybody doing?
Doing well, Matt. How are you?
Doing great. We got a whole legal team. We got a committee here. This is fantastic. Let's go around in a circle here. We'll start with Mr. West. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how you do it and what got you there?
Sure. So I am Travis West. I am one of the founders of West Dunn. The firm's been around for about 5 years. We started with two lawyers and a staff person in a tiny little office. We are, as of August 1, we're up to 10 lawyers and about 25 people altogether.
Nice.
My personal practice, I do a lot of litigation work as it relates to the stuff we're going to talk about today. Where you'll see, where you may end up seeing me is if you get involved in a civil rights issue in which there's a lawsuit involved. Eric and Dave are folks that do more work in the criminal defense realm, and so I expect that a lot of questions will be focused on their practice area in particular. I also do VA disability benefits at the court level, so a lot of appellate work within the federal court system on that front. Before practicing law, I was in the military. I was a member of 3rd Ranger Battalion. I served there for 4 years. Before that, I spent about 5 years working in different government offices, both in the state level and in the federal level. So that's a little bit about me.
Right on. Hardcore. And I did want to highlight one thing that you mentioned, doing the veteran benefits support. So West Dunn is one of our, we're big fans of them because we've talked about this on the show in the past. If you're a veteran that believes yourself to be eligible for disability benefits and you have not gotten the resolution that you need from the Department of Veterans Affairs, you need somebody in your corner, and this is a team that you're going to want to get in touch with because they've had a lot of success with this. And success overall is indicated by how rapidly they're scaling. So, I mean, if you got a denial for a claim or something and you think it's baloney, call West Dunn. They know their stuff. Travis, nice to meet you. Dave, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Adam. I've been in private practice for amazingly over 30 years. Been fortunate to be part of the West Dunn team for a little bit under 2 years at this point. And my practice focuses on, I do some criminal and traffic work. I do a lot of corporate consulting work. I do a lot of litigation in the collection area on the creditor side, handle real estate. So I have a pretty broad practice, and glad to be here today. My wife and I have lived in the Manitowoc County area for about 30 years, and the wonders of modern technology allow us to have a broad-based, far-reaching practice. So really glad to be part of where I'm at right now with West Dunn, and glad to be part of this program today.
Good stuff. Thank you, Dave. Eric, we just hung out in Green Bay at our Veterans Chamber, Green Bay Chamber Muster over there with our friends at Mission, Wisconsin. At Urban Hub. So we hung out recently. But why don't you introduce yourself to anybody that may be watching here?
Sure. Thanks for having me today. My name is Eric. I've been an attorney about 17 years. Been with West Dunn for the last 3 years. The majority of my practice is criminal defense, a lot of drunk driving defense, and I also do some litigation, and I do some work with the Veterans Disability Benefits.
Right on. Diverse group of subject matter experts. So I guess I'll just throw this out here. I'll give all of you an opportunity to expand upon my disclaimer from the beginning, if you so desire, that this is all hypothetical stuff. Nobody is giving you legal advice. And there might be some situations, and we're talking about hypotheticals, that it's important that you speak with an expert or you call into West Dunn and get some kind of more detailed official channel sort of stuff. Is there anything you guys want to add to that? I don't want to get anyone in trouble here.
I think that really covers it. I mean, the reality is that everybody's circumstance is a little bit different. We could talk in hypotheticals all day, but whether that applies specifically to your circumstances or not, you won't know until you get a chance to talk and sit down with an attorney who can analyze the facts of your particular case. There's something that we might mention in a hypothetical here would be great in 80% of the circumstances. But if you fall into that 20%, there's no way for any one of the three of us to know that during this video conference. So make sure that you take what we say with a grain of salt. It can be one of the things that you think about as you're processing your legal questions. But ultimately, if you want professional advice, you're going to need to go get that directly from a professional and not not from the three of us sitting here on the internet.
Well, let's start there with an ultimate hypothetical then. We've seen a lot. I have, at least in social media. It's popular on TikTok. Is almost the gotcha moment, and I understand a lot of people like to for their own safety and security, and for the security of the safety and security of the officers, to record being pulled over just to make sure everything's on the up and up in case you need something to reference, et cetera, et cetera. Totally understand that. We've seen a lot on social media, I have at least, of people getting pulled over and then using that as an opportunity to almost put on a show, a school, a clinic, like, I know what my rights are based on X, Y, Z, and here it is. And some of them end up getting yanked out of the car. So I guess the question is, because there are a lot of YouTube experts that don't know what they're talking about. So I'll throw this out to all of you. When you get pulled over in your vehicle, what are your rights? Do they have the right to ask you to egress, to leave the vehicle? Do you have to roll down your window all the way? Do you have, like, how are you, to what extent are you required to comply, and to what extent are you not?
Eric, you want to start out?
Sure, although I'm having a lot of trouble with the feed. It's sounding very staticky, but hopefully everybody can hear me. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can.
Clear on our end.
Is it just my voice getting staticky?
It's definitely your voice.
Oh, no.
But
Is it staticky to try?
Adam, you sound fine to me.
no,
Okay.
you sound fine. You sound fine, Adam. And Eric, you sound fine as well.
Okay. All right. So as I understand it, you're kind of asking, what are your rights when you get pulled over? Generally speaking, you want to identify yourself, provide your driver's license, and be
required to do
that? I'm sorry.
Are you required to do that?
Yeah, I would say yes. You are required to identify yourself.
So don't mess around with that one.
Right. I would identify yourself, and be polite and respectful, of course. And then you have to kind of wait to see what the officer wants. If you're not under arrest, you are free to leave. So, an officer can stop you if he has reasonable suspicion to believe that you're engaged in illegal activity, right? So he has to have a basis to stop you, whether that's speeding, drunk driving, he thinks you have a warrant for your arrest, what have you. All right. So he can ask you who you are and to identify yourself. But beyond identifying yourself, you have a right to then at that point just say, look, I'm not answering any more questions without an attorney, if that's the approach that you want to take. If he in fact is investigating you for some kind of crime, that's what you should do. If they think that they have enough evidence to arrest you, they're going to arrest you regardless of what you say, and you're not going to talk them out of that. The only thing you're going to do by providing additional information is make it worse. So I would certainly roll down your window. I would identify yourself and then leave it at that. I wouldn't provide any other information.
I'd like to kind of just expand on a couple of the comments that Eric made, because Eric gave a very good response in terms of kind of a technical approach on how to handle these things. You, Adam, you had asked the question of, how do you avoid becoming a viral social media YouTube sensation?
Yeah.
And if you make the choice to videotape an encounter with an officer, that's one thing. Deciding to share it on social media and post it, or to orchestrate it for that purpose, is an entirely different thing. And I think as a practical matter in today's world, law enforcement has a very difficult job. If law enforcement decides that they want to have contact with you, yes, you need to identify yourself. And from that point on, any information you provide is going to get used against you. So you can make the decision of not providing additional information and asking for an attorney. Technically, you don't have the right to have an attorney until you're under arrest and being officially questioned. However, nothing is going to escalate a situation to go poorly for you more than being uncooperative. And in the instance that, the officer made a mistake in pulling you over in your vehicle or deciding to have contact with you, sometimes a bit of patience to let things get themselves sorted out might be the best, as opposed to what we see in some of the things you're referring to, where things kind of get out of control. You don't want to give the officer your name. Now they're upset, and things can escalate and go poorly quickly. That's a different answer than technically what are your rights. And I guess everyone has to make their own decisions on that, but it seems to be the safest route to try to be cooperative and to provide at least that basic identifying information. And then from there, limit what you say and ask for an attorney to be able to communicate on your behalf with law enforcement or whoever it may be.
Are you legally allowed to video record the exchange between yourself and a law enforcement officer? And are you legally allowed to share that on social media?
I would say you are allowed to record things that are happening in a public place, right? And Wisconsin is a one-party consent recording state, meaning you only need the consent of one of the parties to the interaction to make a recording. And of course, you're consenting because you're making the recording and you're one of the people who's involved in the interaction. So yes, you can make the recording. There may, as far as posting it online, I don't think there may be, if there's music playing or something, I see that there may be some copyright issues, but otherwise I'm not aware of any specific restriction that says you can't post it online.
This is a kind of a newer area, this whole issue of being able to make these instantaneous recordings and instantaneously share them. Definitely I agree you have the right to record it. But the common theme that at least I see in the social media is, boy, the officers don't like it. They, you see them interacting immediately, trying to stop it. And I don't think they can. They certainly do, and they certainly will, or they'll certainly try to. They're recording, not in all instances, but in many instances, they have a body camera or they have a camera on their squad or whatever it may be. So they're recording, the person they've stopped. But it certainly creates a higher level of accountability because officers are now acutely aware that this can be going on, and it doesn't have to be as overt as pulling out my cell phone and doing it. I know of many people who have private cameras mounted on their vehicles.
Dash cams are becoming pretty popular.
So I guess it kind of it takes away the speculation as to what went on if there ends up being a video. Actually, I'm in favor of having the videos, but that's not to say I'm in favor of posting them on TikTok and inciting, the community to either be upset with law enforcement or to bring negativity toward the person who was pulled over. A lot of times third parties are taping these things and putting them online.
It's not going to help your case either way. From what it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that you have the right to do any number of things. It's just whether or not any of those things are advisable is the bigger question. Does the police officer have the right to ask you to turn your recording device off or take your recording device from you?
I don't think they have the right to seize your recording device. I'm also not convinced that they have the right to force you to turn it off. But you have to keep in mind there's a high degree of anxiety and intimidation involved when we have a traffic stop. Travis, Eric, and I, we've all been doing this a long time, and we can give people advice on, this is how you should conduct yourself. Well, I personally, when I get pulled over, there's a squad car behind me, and I might have only been speeding, my heart's racing just like everybody else's. So it's and that's a benign situation. The anxiety level is much higher if there's some other more serious reason why that officer's there. So probably technically do not have the right to force you to turn it off. Are they going to take aggressive steps to get that to happen at some point in the process? Yes. It's the same thing as the issues of turning down the radio, stopping smoking, putting your window down, and if an officer, once they've identified you, if there is a situation where they have probable cause or reasonable suspicion, to think that you've done something wrong, there's times when they can get you out of the car.
Let's talk about how broad that is.
Can I jump on one thing real quick here before we jump into yanking people out of cars? I think there's an important facet to this discussion that I think a lot of people lose sight of. We talk about what are your rights if you get pulled over in a vacuum, and that means something different to a lot of us. If I'm on the interstate and there's no one else around, and I know that I'm going 85, and suddenly I see a squad in my rear view, chances are I'm probably getting pulled over for speeding, and I'm aware of what I'm likely being pulled over for. And that may or may not be true, but if I'm playing the odds, I am sort of equipped with the knowledge I need to make decisions about, well, do I just want to tell the officer, I appreciate that I'm 15 miles an hour over, I'll take the ticket and move on because that's what I'm likely to get. Right. That you may not always know what you're being pulled over. You may know exactly what you're being pulled over, and it might be something more significant than speeding. We live in a state where the OWI rate is substantially higher than the national average. There are very few people who are of legal drinking age in the state of Wisconsin who haven't at least one time in their life had one beer too many and got behind the wheel. Chances are, if you get pulled over and it's bar time and you've had that one beer too many, you may be aware that you're in for a much more difficult traffic stop than if you were just speeding, or if you have a blinker out, or whatever it happens to be. So a lot of what we're talking about requires you to exercise some degree of judgment, and then also to recognize that the police officer, the district attorney's office, and a whole slew of other people along the chain have discretion. When I was a first-year law student sitting in criminal law class, they had us pull the statute book out, and then they asked us to go through and identify, if you think back over your life, how many of these different acts within the criminal statutes have you committed and could you have been convicted of? And for most of us, that number is really high. But the police in Wisconsin don't go around, or in most states don't go around charging everybody with every single thing that they could ever be charged with, because it's not. It doesn't fulfill their overall purpose of sort of keeping order, protecting, and serving. There is a lot of discretion that is afforded to the police. They may decide to issue. I can count lots of times when I probably should have been issued a speeding ticket, but the officer exercised discretion and elected not to do so. There are similarly times when the officer exercises his or her discretion to either ticket you, cite you, arrest you, whatever, and then the case goes to the district attorney's office, and the DA decides to exercise his or her discretion, and maybe they do or maybe they don't. The recordings that we're talking about, I agree with what Dave and Eric have said. Under federal law, certainly under Wisconsin's one-party consent rule with respect to recordings, you probably got a right to make those recordings, and you're probably on pretty good ground to defend it if you needed to. The flip side to that, though, is you also have to recognize that the people that you may upset with those recordings have an incredible amount of discretion. If you get pulled over for suspicion of an OWI, whether you record it or not is likely on the spot. It isn't
going to change the outcome.
Telling the officer, hey, I'm recording this and I know my rights, that officer doesn't care at that point. What that officer is worried about is the fact that you swerved over the line and you're a danger to other people that are on the road. Things like that are intangibles that are sometimes difficult to take into account, and that you won't necessarily have a lawyer with you in the car that can tell you, hey, in this circumstance, I advise you pull your camera out. In this other circumstance, maybe you want to turn that thing off because you don't want to get on the back. I mean, those are all strategic decisions that you will need to be able to, or I should say, more they're tactical decisions that you'll need to be able to make on the spot.
Right on. That's some great insights there. Let's shift a little bit because discretion and probable cause is a pretty giant gray, foggy area. It sounds like that. Just basically, the end of the line is you should comply and be as kind and cooperative as possible. Because the only thing you can do with the alternate path is make things worse. Let's talk a little bit about.
Adam, before you go on, I think that's true in a lot of circumstances, but it's not always true. I think
is it not? Okay.
The National Guard lieutenant who got pulled over in West Virginia a couple of months back. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a circumstance where the officers were clearly, at least based on what we could see on the camera, clearly abusing their positions of power. And had that circumstance not been recorded, it could have gone very poorly for that gentleman. So there are circumstances where I think it's absolutely in the client's best interest or the person's best interest to make those recordings. The challenge is always going to be you're the only one there when the circumstances arise. You have to make a tactical decision in the moment as to whether it's in your best interest or not.
Right. Well, yeah, recording or not, though, is the consensus that you should be cooperative and polite?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I think the consensus is to be polite and cooperative. However, I think all of this discussion makes the assumption, which we know isn't accurate, that all actions by law enforcement are appropriate. Okay, so it's a real high wire act to say, well, I know my rights and I'm going to invoke my rights and escalate a situation. There's other times if an officer is acting inappropriately, and fortunately, I think in reality, I think it's a vast, vast, vast minority of situations where that happens, fortunately. But there, and Travis gave a good example, there's a lot of examples. If you don't have the video to back it up, it then becomes your word against the officers. And if they have a wrongful motive in what they're doing, it can end badly for you. So it's a fine line.
I think go ahead, Eric.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, we've been talking about this in terms of a traffic stop as an example, but you could easily substitute a different circumstance. I do a lot of trainings for folks who are choosing to exercise their concealed carry rights in Wisconsin. And one of the things that we talk about is if there is a circumstance that arises where you do use your weapon in self-defense, you need to be prepared for the likelihood that you're going to be arrested. Whether you're the good guy or the bad guy, the law enforcement officer who has probably not dealt with a shooting before, because they're not terribly common, will be rushing to the scene. He or she probably won't know you. They probably won't know the presumably the bad guy who is now either injured or harmed or dead. But they will show up on the scene.
Situation, right?
Right. They will show up on the scene. They will see you with a firearm or know that you had a firearm at one point, and they will see that you have used it in some capacity. That's a night where you need to anticipate you're probably going to go to jail, not because you did something wrong, but because there is probable cause that you may have done something wrong. Mm-hmm. The officer has an obligation to do what he or she can in order to assess the situation the best that they're able to, with the limitations of not knowing what happened and having to interview everybody in the process. That is a circumstance where even though you may benefit from recording it, or you may not, you will definitely benefit from being polite, but also to Dave's point earlier, you will benefit from sort of firmly insisting on your rights. Hey, identifying myself, here's my license if that's what it takes to get the identity done. And I elect not to have a conversation about this right now. I want my attorney present. And that does two things. One, at least two things. One, it allows you to have a discussion with competent legal counsel before you start saying anything to anyone. And two, it creates some distance between the circumstances that happened in which your adrenaline is pumping, your flight or fright reflex has been triggered, and you may or may not remember it in the way that everybody else who may or may not have seen it remembers it. And anybody else who's involved in that circumstance will have that same problem. And frankly, the officer will have that same issue. So it gives you some time to sort of piece things back together and make sure that your physiology isn't playing games with you by the time that you finally get around to making a statement to either to the police or to the DA or whoever you're involved with.
I have a follow-up question based on what Dave was saying earlier. We see a lot of situations recorded on video where the person being spoken to by the police, whether during a traffic stop or stopped on the street, believes that they are being treated in a way that is either unfair or unethical for whatever reason, some kind of heavy-handed enforcement, some unlawful enforcement, some discriminatory enforcement. What do you do? What could one do if you're in a situation where you believe that you are being treated unlawfully or unjustly or unfairly by a law enforcement officer? Is it just respectfully, I can't talk to you about this right now, I'd like to have my lawyer present? Do you ask for a supervisor? What do you do if you think that this is not going the way that it should?
Right. I don't think the advice changes, right? It's, you want to be cooperative and respectful and let them take the action that they're going to take. Keep your mouth shut, ask for an attorney, and then you're going to deal with it after the fact, right? If you get charged with a crime and there was an illegal arrest or an illegal traffic stop, your attorney's going to be able to litigate that for you. If you cause problems and you somehow resist or you argue with the officers, all you're going to accomplish is ending up, worst case, dead, and best case, probably with additional criminal charges that you would not have gotten if you had just said, allowed the officer to do what they're going to do and dealt with it after the fact if you think they are in fact doing something that's illegal. That's what an attorney is for. You don't want to argue with the officer in that time or at that time. Because
chances are they've already made their decision. You're going to get arrested. Like you're going through this process. So what you're saying is like acquiesce, comply, go through the process, be kind, sort it out on the back end, because chances are either way, if they've decided that you are being apprehended, it's happening. You can't talk out of it.
You're not going to talk them out of it, and you're not going to stop them, right? Because they'll use as much force as they need to effectuate the arrest if they've decided they're going to arrest you. We all know that.
Eric, I think you should ask for a supervisor, right?
I would have no problem with asking for a supervisor as long as you're being polite and respectful. You could ask that to speak with an officer higher up in the chain, but your best bet, I still think, is just to say, I'm not answering any questions. Let them take you wherever they're going to take you and sit in the room until your attorney shows up.
I was being facetious about the supervisor.
Yeah, well, you could ask, but I don't think it's good.
Is that bad advice? Because some people always say, I've heard it a lot. I don't know if it's good or bad advice. Is it ask for a supervisor to get another set of eyes on it? It doesn't sound like it's going to change anything.
Very unlikely. I think the common theme that people should walk away from this discussion with is that if you begin to exhibit an attitude toward an officer, you've just started the ball rolling in a bad direction. Okay. If the officer did something wrong and they're going to arrest you, if they're going to issue a citation to you and you think that they're completely inaccurate, let the system sort itself out later with the assistance of an attorney, because I think it would be an extremely rare case that anything you say or do with an officer or have people in the background saying or doing while you're interacting with an officer is going to change their mind. Almost never. Mm-hmm.
So let's change gears a little bit. Another thing that we've seen in pop culture that is very popular as school is about to start, a very hot topic of conversation, especially at school board meetings. I saw our school board meeting was torches and pitchforks, people being escorted out by the police by the end of the dang thing. No lukewarm opinions about masks, and we're not here to debate that or not. But what we hear a lot is, I know my rights. This is America. You can't tell me to wear a mask in Walmart. You can't tell me to wear a mask in whatever state or federal building. this is infringing upon my rights. And now we're talking into some bigger picture stuff here. We went from micro to macro here. But what are somebody's rights? Let's say somebody does not feel comfortable or able to wear a mask. They go into a store and they say, you're going to have to wear a mask or get out. Usually that's where people start filming, and then it ends up on TikTok and blah, 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 and everybody debates about it and nobody gets anywhere. But what are my rights in that situation?
So it will vary a bit depending on your state. Wisconsin, at least at this point, hasn't passed anything that's come through the legislature that says businesses must make people mask or may not make people mask. You're starting to see states like Florida and Arkansas and other places where you've had legislatures and governors push through legislation that prohibits, for example, schools from requiring masks, and that is now being litigated in the courts. So I'm just going to speak generally about Wisconsin, and I'm not going to touch on all that other circus that's going on out there. In Wisconsin, if you are dealing with a private business, you are probably at the mercy of whatever that private business owner decides they want to impose for a policy. So if the private business owner says, I'm only going to provide widgets or services to people who are wearing masks in my store, and you choose not to wear a mask, then that private business owner probably has the right to ask you to leave. It gets a little bit more complicated in some counties. For example, Dane County has decided to reimpose their mask mandate that every place in the county, every indoor place in the county, government, private, must now require masks effective tomorrow, if I remember right. I am certain that issue is going to be litigated. It has nothing to do with whether that's a good idea or a bad idea medically. The issues that come up regularly are the questions about whether the executive that runs Dane County Public Health has the authority to impose a rule like that, or does it have to go through the Common Council? Basically, it's a question that the courts are trying to resolve regarding who has the power to impose masking requirements. So that reason, that gets to your question then, if a county has, or the state or whoever has said, hey, you must wear masks, and I choose not to do it, and the issue hasn't been resolved by the court system as to whether or not that mask mandate is legal or not, what are your rights? Well, we get back into making both tactical and strategic decisions again. If you are confident that the government can't require you to wear the mask, then you can choose not to wear the mask and then run the risk that law enforcement will either arrest or ticket you for having done that, depending on the jurisdiction that you happen to be in. And then you can litigate the issue in the courts, as lots of people have chosen to do. It will be expensive. There's no guarantee as to how it will come out, but if you are confident in your analysis, that is an option available to you. If you prefer not to, if on the other hand, you either have reached a conclusion to the contrary that yes, in my case where I live in Dane County Public Health has this authority, so I'm going to comply, or I don't know whether they have the authority or not, but I don't want to get a ticket, then your option is to go ahead and wear the mask until somebody else takes the risk and figures it out. There have been lawsuits filed with respect to virtually every mask mandate, if not every mask mandate that has been issued in the state of Wisconsin. A lot of them never ended up getting litigated all the way to the end because we started opening back up again in the spring before the courts could finish resolving it. So these questions, a lot of these questions are still open. And as you said earlier, people have really strong feelings on either side of it. You got three lawyers all to yourself right now on this feed. There's not a one of us that could tell you definitively the Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin or the Supreme Court of the United States is going to come out one way or the other on it.
Absolutely. I think
the other thing you need to keep in mind is regardless of whether or not you're going to wear the mask or go somewhere else, Wisconsin, and I assume most other states, has a pretty broad criminal disorderly conduct statute, which includes the potential of being charged with a crime for being unreasonably loud, whatever that means.
So if you cause a scene at a Costco about masks to try to make a viral TikTok video, you could get a disorderly conduct.
Yeah, that's a really crucial point, because now that confrontation at the local Costco now just shifted. It's no longer an issue over masks and whether or not they can force me to wear a mask or not wear a mask and who's going to enforce those rules. And I'll use a municipality like Dane County where they're going to have a mask mandate. You go there and they want you to wear a mask and you cause a scene, as you put it. The problem you're going to have is you're going to get charged with something far worse than not complying with the mask ordinance. You're going to get charged with disorderly conduct, which typically can be an ordinance violation, can also be a misdemeanor crime. And it can be worse. You decide to touch or push or shove, or now you're heading towards more serious charges. So that's got to be taken into account. And people get revved up in the world about a lot of things. Right now, it's the mask situation. And you would hope that people would just use common sense. If you don't agree with somebody who's putting out a rule on that, and you're in an area that doesn't have a mask mandate, well, then you may want to shop at store B instead of store A.
Right.
If you're in a county like Dane County where they're going to have a mask mandate and the county next door does not have one, and you feel that strongly about it, you may want to avoid the situation. To take it on head on, probably, maybe you desire the media attention or the social media attention. It's not going to end well for you if you're going to take those things head on and somebody from the other side is going to push back, because you got to sort it out later.
Big time. Yeah, if you're in Dane County and you want to shop on Walmart without a mask and there's a mask mandate, you may have to go to the next county over, even if it does mean they don't have a Walmart. Maybe you go at a Shopco. Maybe you shop at a Pomida. Is there Pomida anymore? Who remembers Pomida? Come on. So
there's another component of this that often gets lost as well, which is, and people will hate that I say this, but the civil justice system has a price tag on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are not trained as an attorney, it is a challenging thing to do. It is challenging to navigate both the circuit court system in the states or the district court system on the federal level. Not being familiar with the procedural rules, not being familiar with the substantive law, those are challenging things for the average layperson to do. Which means in most circumstances, if you want to have this fight, you're going to have to hire an attorney. Attorneys are expensive. The rates for attorneys, at least in the Madison area, the least expensive one that I am aware of will cost you about $150 an hour. Right. I am also familiar with other attorneys whose hourly rates are approaching 4 figures an hour or higher. The expenses can add up really.
I'm in the wrong industry.
Yeah. You just have to go into it knowing that if you're going to contest a mask mandate, and you get a citation for it, or if you're trying to bring a civil claim, in other words, a civil rights claim, because you're arguing that you were unfairly treated, you're going to have to find an attorney that's willing to take that case on, and you're going to have to pay him or her to do the work. There's not a right to counsel that comes into play when you have civil matters that are pending before the court. That only comes into play on the criminal side of things, and even then, you only trigger the right to a public defender if you meet certain income requirements. So your average person who has a regular blue-collar job, even on the criminal side, probably not going to qualify for a public defender.
So even if you do end up finding an attorney to represent you in your giant civil rights case against Walmart for making you wear a mask, it's not going to get you into Walmart today, and it's not going to prevent you from getting arrested, for flipping some shopping carts over and knocking a display case to the side in a rage. Is what I'm gathering. I could talk to you guys for hours. I think we need to round third and head on home here. So I do have a follow-up question from something we were talking about a little bit earlier, still on the mask tangent. Travis, you had mentioned confidence. If you are confident that legally you can withstand XYZ, I think an unfortunate reality in our society today is that often the folks that are the most mistaken about something are the most confident about and most sure of themselves about it. Obviously, people outside of subject matter experts. You see a lot in these situations, people saying, this is against my rights as an American. If we have a private business that's saying we elect to mandate mask usage in our store, is that situation legally akin to a 7-Eleven electing to have a no shirt, no shoes, no service sign? Or are we talking about a constitutional rights issue, which people seem very confident about? Is just a lot of people blanket. My rights as an American means I can do whatever I want at any time without any consequence. But which one are we dealing with?
So your no shirt, no shoes, no service rule a lot of times is tied into health code type things. It has less to do with some of the issues that we're talking about. I think that you're going to have a really hard time convincing a court that that a private business is infringing on your constitutional rights by imposing an internal mask mandate. The Bill of Rights, which is where we normally look to for most of what the average person thinks of as their rights, were all rules that were created that were intended to protect the population from the government. And if I'm a private business that says, hey, you have to have a mask when you come into my shop, I'm not the government. This isn't Governor Evers. This isn't President Biden. The legislature, whatever, that is saying that you have to wear the mask. This is Adam Bratz, Travis West, Eric Pangburn. I have my store where I sell my widgets, and I, as a private person with my own business, make my own decision that this is who I want to sell to and the manner in which I'm willing to sell it. And frankly, a lot of what American jurisprudence has been built on is the idea that we provide a lot of freedom for people to conduct their business in the way that they see fit. You get a lot of people who argue, perhaps sometimes equally as incorrectly, that if you impose regulations on my business, you're trampling on my rights as an American, which is exactly, in some respects, what we're now seeing people say that the government should do with respect to masks. Hey, hey, Governor Evers, we think that you should do what Governor DeSantis did in Florida, and you should tell businesses they can't put mask mandates in place. There's an equally problematic construct from the opposite point of view. So I appreciate the perspective that we have a lot of subject matter experts out there. They certainly have a particular point of view. I've been in a circumstance where I have represented folks who have been very visible on social media with what they believe their rights to be. I've been in a number of those situations, and sometimes they're right about that. Sometimes they aren't. A lot of times, what I tend to see is that the folks who are right about that may be correct on the underlying subject matter, but they don't understand the procedural rules. And again, that gets back to the American Bar Association puts up lots of barriers to entry to protect the legal industry. Which I guess is great for Eric and Dave and I for a job purpose, but it does make it hard for people to sort of understand, even if I have certain rights, what are the procedural ways in which I can enforce them or protect them?
Right. And from a strategy or practical standpoint, just because you have the right to put something on your social media doesn't mean it's the best thing for the outcome of your case, whether it's criminal or civil, right? Going back to the videos regarding an officer, if that officer did something wrong, you give that video to your defense attorney. The defense attorney shows it to the prosecutor, and your charges might go away. Right. So, from a standpoint of helping yourself, you need to talk to your attorney, and you need to take their advice as to whether you should be putting things on social media, whether it's about masks, whether it's about your traffic stop.
We talk about, I have rights to do a lot of things, to put a lot of stuff on social media. I can tell you that if I'm defending you in a civil case on a firearms issue, and you're on social media wearing all sorts of Second Amendment apparel and intimidator,
showing off your new bazooka you
right,
just got off the dark web.
Yeah, at the end of the day, your case is going to go, if we don't settle it, your case is going to go to a jury. And so there's going to be 12 people that you don't know who are going to be making judgments and assessments about you based on photos that they have seen, based on how you present in the courtroom, based on information that the opposing side will have had the opportunity to share with them, some of which may include you and your coffee or dye T-shirt or whatever you happen to be wearing on that particular day. So you do have the right to do lots of things. Strategically, is it always in your best interest to exercise some of those rights? Sometimes your best interests are served by showing some discretion. I'm not saying it's always fair. I'm not saying it's always going to feel good. But if at the end of the day you want a particular result, you still have to work within the system that we've got.
This is America. We don't need discretion here. Give me a break.
that same Bill of Rights that protects your right to say you don't want to wear masks also says that the way we resolve things is through juries.
There you go.
Your peers are going to be judging you whether you like it or not. And we have constitutionally created a system that puts that in place.
One of the things, a big picture, real simplistic approach, the person who's out there on social media boasting as to what they believe their rights are, oftentimes is not thinking about the fact that what they think are their rights and what they're doing to exercise their rights impairs or steps on someone else's or some other entity's rights. And so there's a balancing, and that's sometimes lost. And when people get extremely passionate about these things, that perspective is forgotten.
That's a good point. There seems to be a lot of focus these days on what are my rights and, to do whatever I want with not as much consideration for how does my behavior affect the rights of other people. So, yeah, it does go both ways. Gentlemen, this has been super informative. We have to do this again soon because I feel like I could have talked to you for a few hours here. We normally don't go this long for office hours, but this was super engaging the whole time. Folks, if you have follow-up questions, feel free to get in touch. West Dunn, they're on all social media. They're online. I got their phone number scrolling across the bottom. I put their phone number in the comments section. Also, be sure to check out the link that I just posted for our upcoming events. A business conference is in November. You can register for that now. That's super exciting. Early bird tickets are $40 cheaper if you get them now between now and October 1st. So probably want to register. So check out that link.
Come on out to the muster in Wanakee in a couple of weeks here, and you can hang out with us.
Yeah, I was going to go from further away and get closer. Also, we're happy to partner with West Dunn coming up here to do one of our networking social events in Wanakee at the Lone Girl Brewing Company. That's Wednesday, September 15th. I'll be there. Mr. Saul Newton will be there, I believe. Christian Thornton will be there, as well as our friends from West Dunn. We're going to be hanging out. That link that I posted, you can register for that event through that link as well. And if you're in the Madison area, Wanakee area, gosh, we sure hope to see you there. We're going to have a good time. Just some casual networking and some refreshments. It'll be a good time. But gentlemen, really appreciate your time today. I'll ask you to hang on the line for just 1 minute so I can follow up with you here at the end. But golly, that was so informative. We are going to do that again very, very soon. And if you have any questions, like any hypotheticals you want to throw out, put them out there on our social and whatnot, and they'll do the best they can to answer it. But really reach out to West Dunn. These guys, not only obviously we love them because they're subject matter experts, but also veteran owned, and they take care of our people, so definitely reach out to them if you got any follow-up questions. We'll see you same time, same place, 11:30 a.m. Central Standard Time on Wednesday for Office Hours Live. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.